All right, hello guys. We are live. It is Saturday, January 27th, I believe, and it is 1 p.m. Eastern time, and that means it is time to go live and spend some time hanging out with you guys here. So welcome to the show. If this is your first time, we're going to have a good time today. And if you're returning and a subscriber, I really appreciate it. Good to see you guys. And if you're not subscribed yet, of course, make sure you go ahead and do that. But now that that's all out of the way, today we're going to be back on track, back on schedule. We had this show scheduled for last week, but anybody who follows me knows that because of some snow in North Carolina, I ended up having to stream from my car. And all that stuff. But we are back in the studio today, and we are going to do our camera movement tools show today. So this is a live show, and of course the benefit of live is that you guys get to interact with me. And so if you are here live in the chat, please feel free to comment and we can interact, and I can pop you guys up here on the screen. I can see here Shiznuts is already here. Good job, man. On time for once. Yeah, you always seem to pop in right towards the end. So I'm glad you're here. This is going to be a fun one. We're going to have a really good time. Let's see here. Yeah, Shiznuts, how's it going? It's going good. Busy times are shaping up. My schedule and everything is getting crazy. I'm getting overloaded. But I will prevail. I will make it through it. I promise. So it's just the way the year goes. You know, when it rains, it pours, and I got jobs and stuff coming in. So it's a good problem to have, being too busy. Sean Mark Nipper, hey, how you doing? On a day away from Mavic Air shop or Mavic Air shipping. 1 day away. Okay. Yeah. I saw the Mavic Air. Don't know if I'm gonna get it. I am a big fan of my Phantom 4, but it is tempting. It's a cool little thing. Let's see here. Shiznut says not too excited himself. GH5S, we've done some talk about that. But anyway, we won't dive into all those products because we are here today with a purpose. We're going to talk about camera movement. And yes, tools like the Mavic Air will be included in types of camera movement, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So camera movement. Well, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's moving your camera. So there are static shots where you have the camera on a tripod. You might do some panning, some tilting, but to really sort of dive into the craft of cinematography, you're going to want to at some point start moving your camera. And there are various ways and various tools that allow you to do that, but you also need to understand why you're moving the camera. You don't want to just be doing it without a purpose. Every camera move has a meaning, has a purpose, drives the story, focuses the audience in a particular way, and has sort of a different psychological effect, if you will. And so I'm going to go through and show you guys some examples of different camera movement tools and some shots that I've utilized them in, and we'll talk about sort of why I chose to do that and what the effect these different things have. So we got a lot to go through today, but it's going to be really cool. It's going to be a good time. So let me take just one last quick look at the chat here, and then we'll dive right into the footage and cranking our way through it. So let's see here. A little more talk about the Phantom 4. Sean says you'll be doing an unboxing with Joseph. Awesome. I will definitely be tuning in for that over on Photo Joseph's channel to see the unboxing of that Mavic Air. Black Magic Tim, hey, how you doing, buddy? Waiting on a plane. Nice. Tools like the Segway Mini Pro too. So I don't have a Segway, but you guys should go and check out Gear Jones and Black Magic Tim. He is like half man, half machine when he gets all rigged up with his Segway and his gimbal and all that kind of stuff. It's amazing. Shiznuts, planes, trains, and camera gear. Would love a programmable slider and tilt panhead. We're going to get into that a little bit today. I'm going to tell you the one that I am currently using. So without further ado, I'm glad to see we have an active chat, but we're going to dive right into some of the camera movement tools. So let's get us going. So let me pull up my Adobe Premiere here. All right. So like I said, there are a lot of different tools that you can utilize to move your camera, and you need to understand what types of shots each one is capable of capturing, and when you would utilize what tool. And so one common tool that people use, the first one we're going to dive into, is sliders. So here, let me actually pull out here for a second here. So sliders, I'm sure everybody's pretty familiar with it, but basically the idea of a slider is that you have a rail or a track of some sort, and then a cart or carriage that you can mount your camera onto, and then it literally slides back and forth. So it has a linear motion, and it allows you to get those nice slide moves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some examples of some slider moves that I have shot, and I'm going to show you how to utilize a slider to be the most effective. So let's get in here. So I have some clips of some stuff that I have shot in the past on various different sliders, but here we go. I'm going to roll through the footage here. Let's make it big so you guys can see it. So this is sort of a collection of some different slider shots. So here we go. Moving along, this was shot on my 5D Mark III on a slider, and here you go. This is actually from a video where I did a review of that IMORDEN slider. I'll put a link to that down in the description. But as you can see, there are a lot of different moves you can do with a slider, but you are always moving in a linear motion. So here I'm getting a down low shot, and you can sort of see the results of that. But you are always moving in a straight line, and you're limited by the length of your slider. This one was a pretty decent length, and so I can get some nice shots here. A little spider web in there. That's a pretty cool shot right there. Going through. Yep, here's some more. Again, this was from a review that I did of this particular slider. It's just a full manual, pretty cheap slider. I'll put a link to it down in the description. Okay, let me pause real quick. So this right here is a use of a slider. All those shots that we just saw were really just, you know, beauty shots. They were reveals, they were stuff in the woods, they were great, and you could see how I was utilizing the slider to get that subtle movement. And this is an example from a film that I shot. A good friend of mine, Sean Leister-Frazier, he did a narrative film for his graduate thesis, and I was the director of photography for it. And so this is using a slider in a narrative setting. So I'm going to play this scene for you guys, and the slider move is there, but it's really, really subtle. So I want you guys to go ahead and take a peek at this. So you can see it's really, really subtle. And we come to the reverse, but there's a slow push in, and I'm doing that with a slider. And what that does in this narrative setting is these two guys are basically spaced out. They're, you know, high on drugs pretty much, and they're just chilling and having a conversation. But that slow, subtle move gives us that slow draw into their conversation, and it's barely there, but it is there. So yeah, hang on, let me pull out of this here. So here is another example of utilizing a slider, and this is used in that same film, but it's used to do kind of a reveal. So let me go ahead and play this for you guys. So as you can see, we slide along, moving to the side, we revealed this other character on the other side of the wall, and it was just the perfect opportunity to utilize a slider. And yeah, so there we go. Okay, so those were some examples of slider shots. So let's think about what we just saw. So sliders, obviously you're on a linear track, you're moving side to side or pushing in and out. You can do push pulls, and they're usually very compact, they're very versatile. They do have their limitations, obviously, because you're just moving in a straight line, but you can use them to do those sort of reveal shots, or you can slowly push into a conversation or something like that. And so you're adding a slight subtle amount of movement. Now, one of the things that you always want to do with a slider move is you want to make sure that you have foreground elements. And those foreground elements are going to accentuate your move and show that there is sort of that parallax happening, the difference between the foreground and the background. And actually, a prime example of that was this first shot. So let me pull that up again. So as you can see here, I have this plant in the foreground here. And then obviously here's all my background, which is much, much farther away. But since I have this plant in the foreground, when I move, you really can see the motion and the shift, and it just, you know, it works out great. Here I'll let this play through. So here again, here's my foreground elements, which show a lot of motion, while my background doesn't really show that much motion there. And so that's called the parallax effect, where you get stuff moving back and forth, and the difference between that foreground and the background. So always make sure you have foreground elements to show that parallax and the shift in the motion. So that's sliders in a nutshell. Let's take a peek at our chat here, because I know everything's been going crazy. Sean Mark Nipper, skateboard, wheelchair, rollerblades. Yes, those are all creative ways to move the camera. I'm going to get into some of the more specific filmmaking products, if you will, but yeah, those are awesome. Trevor, hey, good to see you. The slider is still probably my favorite movement tool in terms of the quality it gives the footage. Yeah, sliders are incredibly useful, and if you add like a pan tilt head on top, you can start doing some more complex moves. They're so simple, but they are extremely powerful, and there's tons of different ways for you to set them up. Let's see here, Devin. Good to see you, buddy. All DPs need to learn how to ride a boosted board, as far as I know. I don't know how, so I guess I'll have to learn how to do that. Let's see here, a little more chat back and forth. Okay, and perfect. So Shiznut says that the thing with high res faking a 1080p or even 2K project from 4K footage, you can't get that parallax faking a slide. Yeah, so what he's talking about is a lot of people will shoot in like 4K when they're mastering to 1080, so you're shooting a higher resolution, and you do that sort of digital move because you have so many extra pixels, so you can animate your frame to move across. So it looks kind of like a slider move, but you can't get that parallax effect, the difference between the foreground and the background, unless your camera at the time of recording is physically moving and those objects are physically changing in the scene. So yeah, you can kind of fake it, but you can spot it when it's definitely not actually done on a slider. So in terms of the sliders that I use, guys, like I said, there's that IMORDEN one, which is really, really cheap, and I'll put a link to it down in the description below. But my favorite slider that I personally use is I use the edelkrone SliderPlus. It's a really, really creative design in that it actually travels twice its length. I did a video review of it like 2 years ago, I think, so I'll put a card so you guys can check that out, and I'll also pop it down in the description down below. But that's the one that I've been using. It is on the pricier side, but investing in a really good slider is just, I mean, you get what you pay for. And so some people say edelkrone stuff is a little overpriced, and it probably is, but I love that slider. So let me see here. Moving right along, I'm gonna get us set up. Okay, so we had a comment on this, somebody mentioned it earlier, but wanting to have motorized pan, tilt, and slide and all that stuff. So one of the reasons that I love the edelkrone SliderPlus is that I actually picked up the motion control kit for it, which makes it a 4-axis motorized controlled slider. What that means is that you mount these motors onto it, and it can automate the slide, it can automate the pan, it can automate the tilt, and it can automate pulling focus. So it's really versatile. So I have been using that for the past few weeks and sort of playing around with it and checking it out, and I really like it. And so that brings us to our next sort of thing. This is sort of sliders and then some, but we're going to talk about motion control. So motion control is where you basically have a slider or something like that to that effect with those motors on different axes in order to control via an app or a computer or whatever it may be, control the movements and do a whole bunch of different moves at once. So I'm going to show you guys some motion control stuff. It's not the craziest stuff, but I was just playing around with it, so I want to show you guys what we're working with here. So some friends of mine, Tommy and Matt over at Stock Productions, I recommend you guys check them out. Good friends of mine since high school. They were doing a computer build video, and so I brought my edelkrone motion kit over to test it out, and we just kind of got some shots and played around with it, but I'm going to show you guys what we got here. So let's go ahead and play through this. So as you can see, it's sliding automatically, but we also have a little bit of a pan happening. And so here's one where it's pulling back and we have a bit of a tilt. All this automated through the app. The motors are doing it. Here's another move. So really subtle here, but another one, a push in and looking down. And here's a great one, probably one of my favorites, coming around and also doing that pan to keep everything focused on that graphics card. And this one's pretty much just a slide, but again, automated motion control, which means that it's completely repeatable. And basically the sky is the limit with what you can do if you add motion control to something like a slider. I might go further in depth in another video at some point into the Edelkrone Motion Kit. I haven't had it very long, so I've only shot a few things with it, but I do want to do a review of it at some point. So stay tuned for that, guys. I'll make sure to get that out and going for you. All right. So before we move along, let's see here. I know we've got our chat going crazy. Let's see here. Canova is a pretty good entry. So you're talking about sliders. Yeah, Canova is a great brand. I don't own any of their stuff, but I've seen a lot of really good reviews of their stuff out there. Let's see here, DIY programmable. Okay, so you're talking about DIY motion control stuff that you can program. And Film Riot did a good video on the frozen time effect with motion control. Very cool. So yeah, motion control allows you to do a lot of different things because it's perfectly repeatable. So visual effects, you can use that a lot. You can do like a shot of a room and you can put, duplicate yourself all over. Like there's tons of stuff you can do. I'm barely myself scratching the surface of motion control, but you better believe I'm going to be diving into it a lot more now that I have that edelkrone system. I really, really like it, and I'm looking forward to figuring out some cool new stuff that I can do with it. All right, let's see here. All right, so we're going to move on to our next tool. So this next tool, I don't see them used as much as they used to be. The technology is sort of replacing them, if you will. They're usually kind of big, kind of bulky, not necessarily always travel friendly. But we are talking about jibs or cranes, depending on how you want to call it. And so a jib is basically just a big arm with counterweights at the back that you put your camera up on the end, and you're able to get your camera up in the air or down low and get all sorts of different shots with it, and really move it around. Nowadays, a lot of jib shots seem to be kind of replaced by drones and so forth, and we'll get into that later. But I do own a few jibs. I own an 8-foot Kessler Crane jib that I absolutely love. It's very beefy, very heavy. But we've flown reds on it and stuff like that, some pretty big camera packages. And I have a smaller one, actually, from a company called IMORDEN. The same guys who made that cheapo slider also make a little portable jib that I did a video review of, and I'll put a link down in the description for you guys if you want to go check that out. But let's go ahead and I'm going to show you guys some of the jib shots that I've done over the past few years. And I had to dig pretty deep to pull up some of these because like I said, jibs just don't seem to be used as often as possible, or as they used to be. But they definitely serve a purpose and definitely have a really unique look that you really can't achieve with anything else. Drones get close, but you'll see what I mean here. So let's go ahead. And I'm going to pull up this footage for you guys. All right, so I'm going to play through this and talk over it and let you guys know. But basically, this is a collection of some of the jib shots that I've done over the past few years. Some of these shots are very, very old, but it is what it is. So we'll go ahead and play through. So this is a jib shot from a friend's film that we did years and years ago. This was actually on a Red 1. Craziness. But here we go. So we're coming down, and basically it allowed us to bring the audience into this scene. So you get the whole idea of this orchard and all the stuff that's going on in the orchard. So you can see basically in one shot, we reveal the entire location to the audience, and then we're able to direct them and bring them quite literally down and into the scene. And so that was the significance of using the jib for that scene, was we were able to establish our setting and bring the audience into the scene in one shot. So it was very effective there. So here we go. This is that smaller slider, the IMORDEN one that's actually portable carbon fiber, obviously for use with much smaller cameras. I think that's an A7S II that I was testing at the time. And like I said, guys, I'll put a link to this video if you want to watch the whole thing of how this jib works and whatnot. But much smaller jib. But let's see how I used it. I was in Knoxville, Tennessee, testing this out. And so here you go, typical jib shot. You know, going up and into the tree. This shot's actually not very good because there's no subject at the end. It just kind of goes into the tree. But the following ones are much better. So here we go. This is a great shot coming up. We got the birds going, and we go, and there's that gigantic ball in Knoxville. So that's a beautiful jib shot. So here's another reveal going up a statue in that park. And so you can see here what the advantage of a jib is that I can get the camera from low to high. So this camera at this point is way above my head, and I have the jib extended basically as high as it'll go, but there it goes. So this is from a friend's film, the guys over at the Forge Studios. I really encourage you guys to go and check them out. They make some amazing like fantasy films and projects, and a few years ago we did a feature-length film with them called The Rangers. So you guys should definitely go and check that out. But this is using it in, like, all these were sort of beauty shots, like I said. But this is utilizing it in a narrative setting. Let me get to it. So we have this character that's about to climb up onto this rock and sort of survey the area. And so it was the perfect opportunity to utilize the jib to come up and show that he's at a great height. So here we go. Here's the shot. And the character comes up and over the top of the rock, and he's scoping everything out. So that was a perfect situation for utilizing a jib move. To show that he's, you know, ascending, he's climbing, he's coming up, he's at great height, and it was just the perfect opportunity to utilize a jib in a narrative setting. So like I said, guys, jibs don't seem to be used as often as they used to. I think it's because you know, people like to travel light. Filmmaking seems to be becoming as a whole more compact, more lightweight, moving quicker, and jibs are big, they're heavy. You know, part of the whole function of them is that they require having counterweight, so you are carrying a lot of weight around. But if you have the time to set them up, if you have the time and the manpower to carry everything out there and get it set up, jibs can get you some shots that are almost impossible to replicate in any other way. So jibs are a great way to move that camera. And like I said, guys, Kessler Crane, I highly recommend them. I have one of their cranes. I absolutely love it. And then also there's that cheaper, lightweight IMORDEN Slider, great for smaller cameras, which a lot of people are utilizing these days. So let's take a peek here. I see some Kessler talk in there. Yeah, Trevor says, to my eye, nothing makes a better establishing shot than a jib, especially if you want that big budget cinema look. Yeah, so exactly. And let's take a peek here. That's exactly what we did with this. You know, it's perfect for an establishing shot. Like I said, in one shot, we can show you guys how big this environment is, and we can literally bring the audience down into the scene. So for an establishing shot, jibs are fantastic. But yeah, so let's come back out. But yeah, and jibs, you know, they're used all the time on huge, big budget like features. Like you see these gigantic ones, they mount them to cars and all sorts of stuff like that. Just like the thumbnail for this video. No, guys, I don't have one of those, sorry. But yeah, you just don't see it as much with indie filmmakers, I find, these days. But let's see here. Glad you picked the topic of motion control. Worked with a Milo ones. Crazy moves, but too darn expensive to own. There's a Chinese company doing the same. Talking to them for a unit. Very cool. Camran, sorry. very cool. I'll look into that and check that out. There's tons of ways to do motion control. I just happen to be using the edelkrone system, and I've really been liking it. I made some cool stuff the other night just messing around with it. And so, yeah, it's good stuff. But yeah, jibs are great. They can get epic shots, so. All right, man, we got a lot to cover. I'm sorry if I'm going kind of quick, guys. I'm just, you know, flying by the seat of my pants here because I know we've got a lot of stuff to go through. So our next method of moving the camera has blown up in the past 3-4 years. It was a new technology and everyone has gone crazy for it, and it has developed and become more advanced, and there's some really cool stuff you can do. And of course, I'm talking about gimbals. 3-axis motorized electronic gimbals. The first of which was arguably the Movi from FreeFly, and now it seems like every company out there makes some sort of gimbal, all the way from stuff for GoPros and phones up to you know, large stuff for big cinema cameras. So I do own actually a lot of gimbals. I have a GoPro one, I have a phone one, but I'm going to talk about my bigger ones. So I have the original DJI Ronin, and I absolutely love it, except for the fact that it is very, very heavy. It gives you a good workout when you use it. And recently I also picked up the Zhiyun Crane version 2, not the Crane 2. Their naming scheme is crazy, but I got that for use with my GH5, which is a much smaller, much lighter camera, so I didn't need this huge gimbal to go with it. So I use that quite often. And they're great. They really do have an interesting look, and what they allow you to do that's awesome is you can move the camera anywhere. You have complete freedom about where you position your camera in space and where you move it. You can mimic slide shots with it. You can mimic jib shots with it, you know, as high as your arms will go, obviously. But you can do orbiting shots. You can do all sorts of amazing stuff with it. Man, the sun is really coming in and out, isn't it? It's windy as heck out and it's blowing all these clouds through. But gimbals, I'm a fan. And some people say they look a little too electronic, they need some tuning and whatnot, but we'll get into that. But let me show you guys some of my DJI Ronin work here. Okay, so here we go, guys. This is from another film that I did with the guys over at the Forge Studios. This was a sci-fi steampunk western short, which is awesome, and it's called Outlawed Faith. So go ahead and check that out, guys. I believe they have it up on their YouTube channel, so make sure to go check out the Forge Studios. But I'll try and put a link if I can find it too. But these were shots that we did in this bar scene that we had set up, and I used the DJI Ronin, and this was actually shot back on the 5D Mark III. And I'll show you what kind of shots we're talking about. So in this case, I use them for establishing shots of this bar scene and to sort of move the audience through. But enough talking, I'll play it. So here we go. We pick up the barmaid there and follow through. And here we go. We come and check out these guys at the table. You know, just setting the whole scene. This is an awesome, you know, sort of orbit shot. And here we go. Here's some more guys hanging out at the table. We got one more in here. Okay, so before I get to this shot here, so what you can see in there is that the gimbal allows me to have complete freedom of where I position my camera in space. So I'm able to track, I'm able to follow, I'm able to pivot around, I'm able to do all these things. And it's an incredible tool to have that freedom to be able to go. Nothing else can do this. You know, a slider can only go in a straight line. A jib can only go as far as the jib can reach. But with a gimbal, you can go wherever, which I think is freaking awesome. This next shot right here is absolutely one of my favorite shots, and it brings a character in, and then we follow that character as he moves and interacts with two other characters in the scene. So let me show you guys. Again, this is from that film Outlawed Faith. But here we have our character comes in, he's scoping everything out, and he sees the other characters and he starts moving, but the audience, we move with him and we are brought into this conversation. And so we utilize the movement of the camera to bring the audience with that character, literally following him on his journey and bringing us into this dialogue scene. So that's, moving the camera with a purpose. The audience is literally following with this kid on his journey, and we did a literal move bringing you into this dialogue scene. So that was really cool. And, oh, hey, DL's in here and said, hey, that's me. Yeah, DL, you were in here. Let's see, where are you? There you go, right here. This is my man DL Moody right there. So shout out DL, thanks for joining. DL was another camera op on that film as well. Obviously, we all had many hats on this independent production. So let's see, let's go here. Okay. So this shot that I'm going to show you guys is again from that film Proflexia that I did, and this is the use of a gimbal. This character is waking up after a very long night of drinking beer and whatnot, and so he's disoriented. He's not quite sure what's going on. He's waking up. He's groggy. And we use the gimbal to do a single shot to sort of follow along with him, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So he's waking up, he's confused, and so by following him with the gimbal, we are exploring this space with him. So he trips over something. So we are taking in the environment and the surroundings at the same time that the character is. So it's not like we have a wide shot that shows us the entire room and we know what's going on, but the character doesn't. No, we are exploring and learning the space at the same time as this disoriented character. So, it keeps us sort of tunnel visioned, if you will, that we don't get the whole big picture of what's going on because he doesn't get the whole big picture of what's going on. So by following with him, like I said, we are exploring the space at the same time as the character. And it was just, it was the right time to use that kind of move. And I think it turned out really, really well. Okay, so let's pop back into the chat here. Let me get this queued up. So yeah, that is gimbals. Everybody seems to have one nowadays. They make them in all shapes and sizes and types and everything, but just remember, they are still just a tool, and you need to know when to utilize that tool. So many people get a hold of a gimbal and every single shot that they shoot is on a gimbal. You need to think of your motivation in your scene, especially if you're doing narrative work. When is a gimbal move appropriate? Why are you moving the camera like that? Like in that example I showed you guys there, they were very purposeful. We were literally, it's like the audience was walking along with those characters and exploring the space with them. And so that is a good use of a gimbal. It can be tempting to just go crazy with them because they look so cool and look, everything's moving and it's awesome. But as you refine your skill and refine your craft, you'll really start to what we call motivate the camera moves, which is what you always want to do. You always want to think, what is my motivation? Why is this camera moving? What does that do for me? And gimbals are an amazing tool to utilize that. Let's see here. She's nuts. We now just need more affordable remote motorized focus control options. Oh, don't even get me into how much wireless follow focuses cost. I have a Red Rock Micro one, and good Lord, it costs an arm and a leg. Trevor says, I have the Moza Air coming on Monday. I think we just hit the point of development for extremely refined, affordable, multi-purpose gimbals. Yeah, so that technology has come leaps and freaking bounds in the past few years. I remember the first ones were like kits that you had to like build yourself, and there were exposed wires and everything everywhere. But now they're nice, they're polished, they're refined. You don't have to like plug them into a computer and write code to calibrate them and stuff like that. They've become very affordable, and they are a very useful tool. But you just need to make sure that you have a purpose for why you're using a gimbal in your shot. You know, it's like when somebody gets a full frame DSLR for the first time and every single shot is super shallow depth of field. You know, you don't want that. You want to make sure that you rein it in and make sure you have a purpose. Let's see here. Jake Guptill, good morning / afternoon. Yes, it is afternoon here for me. Oh, my water's spilling all over the place. But welcome, welcome. Glad to see you. Thank you very much for joining us today. Jay, hey, longtime fan, love the beard. Thank you, man. Good to see you. I appreciate you coming in and joining. And yeah, the beard is a new development. This was No Shave November, and then my wife said I could keep it, so I kept it. I'm kind of liking it. So we'll see. I don't know. I feel like an adult now. I feel like if I took it off, I'd look like a child again. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how long it lasts. But for the time being, I'm liking it. All right. So gimbals. Now, gimbals came onto the scene, and there was a bit of controversy because, as you know, we've been able to move cameras freely in space, but it was utilizing a different tool. An old school tool that is tried and true and of course is still relevant, and that is the Steadicam. So Steadicam, glide cam, all those sort of gimbals that are not electronic but are rather gravity and balance based with isoelastic arms and all that. And so there was a big heated debate about gimbals versus Steadicams. And actually one of my most popular videos that I've ever done on this channel was a direct comparison of the DJI Ronin versus a professional Steadicam. And I will post a card up here and a link to the description down below because I really think you guys should check that video out if you haven't. A friend of mine, David Aronson, is a professional Steadicam operator. He has a huge rig, and we went out and pitted them side by side. Didn't make any decisions. We just put that side-by-side footage up there for everybody out there to take a look at and make their own conclusions about how they compared and how they looked. So go ahead and check that out. That was awesome. But Steadicam is still very relevant, and it has a different sort of look, a more organic and fluid sort of look, if you will. So I have a few Steadicam shots, and I will show you guys those right meow. Yep, I said it. I'm looking forward to Super Troopers. All right. So here we go. So this, at the very beginning here, this transition is not a Steadicam shot, but it's just an awesome transition, so I'm including it there. This is from that film Preflexia that I've been showing you guys some shots of, but here we go. So here's a Steadicam shot. That's a cool transition. So this is Steadicam. So you see it's more organic, it's more fluid, a little less electronic and robotic. And yeah, so what we did there was, again, you know, this character is late, he's in a rush, he's a little disoriented, and so we're following him into work. And the Steadicam was just the perfect choice for this. You probably could have done it on a gimbal, but that fluid appearance and look is something that gimbals have a really hard time replicating. And so it's just, it was the perfect solution for Steadicam. So let me show you guys here. Oh, we have somebody watching from Nepal. Awesome. So here's another shot, Steadicam shot from Preflexia. So he's coming down the hallway, leading him, then following him, and brings him into this next scene where he goes and gets in a fight with his boss. So again, Steadicam was chosen there to, you know, first we lead him, meaning we're walking in front of him, looking backwards. We get that expression on his face. We see that he's angry. We see what's happening. Then we switch to following, and this sort of reveals where he's heading. And then he goes in and fights with his boss. So there we go. So yeah, another Steadicam shot. Fantastic. This last one, I believe, is a shot from The Rangers. It is. Okay, so that's again from the Ford Studios film, The Rangers. This was done on a glide cam, just handheld. And this shot, you're really going to see that organic, you know, it's not perfect. It's not perfectly steady and level. It has this organic feel to it that really adds to the feel of the shot. So let's take a quick look. So here we go. We can float, and you can see the camera's just like floating. and brings us into here. That's some crazy makeup, by the way, guys. So yeah, let's look at that again. You can see the organicness. If you look at the edges of the frame, you know, it's not static. It's not straight up and down all the time. As it goes through, the camera is moving and swaying and flowing, and it has this really organic feel to it. That's just, you know, you can't recreate that with anything other than a Steadicam or glide cam or something like that. So yeah. So that's Steadicams, you know, so that Steadicam versus gimbal debate I think will be forever, but I encourage you guys to go and check out my my Ronin versus Steadicam video and see what you guys think of the footage and see which one you think is best. They both have their merits and they both have their purposes, times when you'd want to use one versus the other and whatnot. Man, this light is changing like crazy. Ugh. I've got the camera set to auto exposure, but it's having trouble keeping up. But anyway, we'll go over it. Trevor here says, I love Steadicams. They take oodles of practice to get good with. And God help you in the wind. It's a good replacement for a gym workout too. Yeah, so that is something to be said about Steadicams. Steadicams, the guys who are professional operators have trained for years and years and years to do it, because it is not something that you can just pick up and do perfectly. It requires a lot of skill, it requires a lot of practice, and yeah, the larger rigs, you need to be in some pretty good shape, or at least have a pretty strong core, because you're strapping sometimes like 100 extra pounds just to the top half of your body, and it's gonna hurt. I took a Steadicam course in college, and part of the requirements for that course were that we signed up for a core workout class at the school gym. That was a weekly thing that we had to do, because basically they were saying, like, if you're not in shape, this class is gonna hurt. So it was required to go and do that, which was pretty cool. But you know, while I'm a gimbal guy now, I definitely still like to utilize Steadicams in my projects when they're the right tool for the job. Let's see what we got here. How did the Steady-Op fit through that closing door? That is insane. So you're talking about this shot. Let me pull it up here. Yeah, it was quite a production to do this. So here we go. So here's the Steadicam, and yeah, look at this. So the door opens, and he makes it through. And it's crazy. You don't realize it, but there's actually, I think there were like 4 of us. So we had the Steadicam operator, we had somebody behind him monitoring and pulling focus. I believe I was pulling focus on this one while David was shooting. And then we had another assistant here to actually grab and hold that door when it got flung open. So there's, I guess it's 3 of us for camera, 3 of us in this hallway waiting. He comes out, and then all 3 of us move as a group and like run through and go in here. So it was quite a production, quite a planned out shot. Obviously rehearsed quite a few times to make it all work and everything. It turned out really great. Let's see here. All right. Trevor says, I will say that man buns and top knots should only be allowed if you have a hilt and sword on your side. All right, fair enough. Maybe the hairstyle choice wasn't the greatest, but you know, that's a director decision. I was the DP, so not on me. But yeah, so, okay. We are moving right along. So we've done sliders. We've done motion control, which is sort of like sliders on steroids. We've done jibs, which we don't seem to see as much anymore, but definitely have really unique look to them. We have gimbals, sort of the new hotness and craze, if you will. Then we have Steadicam, you know, the tried and true industry standard of free moving cameras. And so now we're gonna go probably as low-tech, no, definitely as low-tech as you can go, which is actually no tech. There is a child screaming bloody murder outside. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but someone is having a bad day. So anyway, this next one is no tech, just using these guys. We're talking about going handheld. And yes, handheld does have its merits, and handheld definitely has its purpose and uses. So handheld footage has an aesthetic to it that is shaky, it's kind of gritty, it's kind of fast-paced and kind of chaotic, if you will. And a good example that I always give people of like some of the best handheld work is if you look at the Bourne movies. A lot of those are done handheld, and it gives this sort of frantic kind of feel to it. And handheld is really, really good for that type of work. So I'm going to show you guys a few scenes in which we used handheld to sort of affect the emotion and the feeling of the scene overall. So let's go ahead here and bring that in. Okay guys, so this is a scene from that film, The Rangers, that I told you about, the sort of fantasy film from the guys over at the Forge Studios. So this is a scene where this character, this girl here, is she's run into a local bar because these guys are chasing her and she's asking for help. Now you'll see that we utilize handheld a lot in this to sort of show her distress and kind of panic and whatnot. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at this scene and how it plays out. So you can see handheld, very shaky. She's uneasy. These guys are coming for her. She's panicked. And the handheld really adds to that look. And now here, I want to show you guys this. Here's another character that we're about to be introduced to. And what you'll notice with his shots is that they're static. They're locked off. They're not handheld. They're on a tripod. And what this does is it shows that he is calm, he's confident, he's in control. So her stuff is handheld and frantic and shaking because that's, you know, her world is in turmoil, but he is rock solid, calm, he's in control, so all of his stuff is locked off. And as we continue to watch through this, you'll see, try and notice the contrast between, you know, her shots moving and his shots not. So let's keep going through this. So here we go. So shaky, handheld, rock solid. This guy's in control. Now, this guy is sort of the head of the bad guys, and his shots are also locked off because while the other guys, the cronies if you will, are fighting with and handling the girl and are a little bit nervous perhaps, this guy doesn't take crap from anybody and he's not intimidated, and so he's standing his ground rock solid as well, so he is also locked off. So you see how we're utilizing these different techniques to sort of sell the emotion of what's happening in this scene. So here we go. This guy's calm and collected, so is he. They're having a talk back and forth. Boom, now we're to here with her. Shaky, handheld, crazy. And they're having their scene. He gets up. She's still, okay, so what I'm gonna do, so he puts the coin down. I'm gonna get to the end here where they start to fight. Sorry guys, just scribbling. Okay, so here we go. So this guy's nervous, and here we go. As soon as they get into the fight, we're back to handheld. It sells that chaos, it sells that motion and that emotion, that everything is hectic and crazy. So as soon as the fight started, we go handheld. And it really sells that feel of the scene and of the environment. And there we go. So yeah, again guys, handheld does have its place. It has its purpose. And it can really sell the emotion of a scene, especially when you utilize it like we did there. The contrast between the characters who are in control and are not intimidated, and then the characters who are in sort of turmoil. So really effective, you know, cinematography tool there. Let's see, I think I have another clip in here. What do I got? Oh yeah, okay. So this is again from the Rangers, and this is using handheld in a battle scene. Obviously battle is chaos, it's hectic, and so handheld was the way to go for this shot. So let's take a look here. I'll show you guys this epic battle scene. So we're in it, the audience is in it, you feel the grit of it, it's handheld, it's chaotic, you're being jostled about and shaking because that's what's happening to the characters. Yeah, some cool, crazy stuff in this movie. I'll tell you what, guys. Again, this is the Rangers from the Forge Studios, but you see everything's handheld and chaotic, and it really sells the feel of this being a battle. If everything was locked off and on a tripod and steady and perfect, it wouldn't feel right. It wouldn't feel like a battle. It wouldn't feel intense. It wouldn't feel confusing. And so handheld was the right choice on that one there. So yeah, you don't have to spend a ton of money to get what you need, because sometimes the best tech is just your hands. So handheld is a very powerful tool, and I recommend you guys try and utilize that when it's appropriate for your project. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at some of this chat here. I'm a film student studying cinematography, and I'd like to buy a Steadicam or gimbal. Which one of these is more versatile? You know, that's something that people are going to argue and debate back and forth. I think that that's hard to say. Gimbals are basically easier to get, pick up, and go. Steadicams and glide cams, even the small ones of whatever size, are going to take practice and learning. Now, I think that you should practice and you should learn how to use those. That's an invaluable skill that you will have. Sorry, I just touched my mic. And so you're going to now have that skill. But in terms of just if you want to dive right in and go, I think gimbals are probably the way to go. They're so much easier to just set up and go and run with. So that's just my 2 cents on that one there. Jay says, have you had any experience with Cine tape? Looks like a very useful utility for a focus puller. I don't know Cine tape. I'll have to look that up. Yeah, I'll check that out. I've never heard of that. Trevor says, do you see gimbals starting to replace dolly shots? In some cases, it might be impractical depending on the size of the rig, but in the future, that's going to be interesting. So that's interesting. So dollies, I originally had them included on this list, dollies, but I didn't include them. And it's because I feel that for independent filmmakers, I really don't feel that dollies are getting used at all. So jibs kind of barely made the cut because you don't see them as much. But dollies, I feel like you see even less because you have to set up track and you have to, it's a lot. It's a big production to set up a dolly shot. I do have a dolly. I have the Kessler K-Flex dolly, which is pretty cool. I'll put a link down in the description if you guys want to check it out. But it's huge, it's heavy. It's something where it takes a lot of time to set up and it's very difficult to use and get right. You need to practice. And so dollies, I don't know, just in terms of independent filmmaking, I don't see them being used as much. Obviously, they're used all the time in big budget stuff because they're rock solid and they're fantastic. But I just don't see them used as much. And I do feel that gimbals and Steadicams and stuff can sort of replace them, can do the move of a dolly, but then also more. So I don't feel that, if you had a gimbal, I don't think you would go out and buy a dolly. I think you would just sort of mimic a dolly shot with a gimbal or a Steadicam. So that's just my thought of seeing where stuff is going these days. All right, we are on the home stretch here, guys. I've got one left. And I'm sure you guys have been wondering where this was, and don't worry, we're gonna get to it. These are some of my favorites. If any of you guys follow me on this channel, you know that I love these things and take them everywhere I go, and it's drones. So drones are another new tech that has emerged and have just blown up. And so drones literally allow you to put a camera basically anywhere. Now the sky is open to you. It's basically a gimbal that doesn't have to be stuck near the ground. So you can get all sorts of beautiful aerial shots and stuff like that. And when drones first came out, everybody, all that you shot with it was really high establishing shots, big wides, because it was amazing to have a camera up in the air. But nowadays people have sort of refined it a bit and are finding ways to utilize them more as a cinematography tool. Because some of the best shots that I got or that I get with my drones are near the ground. Because that's where your action is. That's where everything's happening. So being way up high is not always the right answer. Granted, you can get amazing beauty shots, and I've got plenty of videos of places that I've visited like Sedona, Arizona and whatnot, where there's just amazing beauty shots just up high. Doesn't matter where you point the camera, it's gorgeous. But when you're using them in sort of a narrative setting, you can really utilize drones to do a lot of cool stuff. So I'm gonna show you guys a couple of shots here. Some are the cliche beauty shots, and then others I'm going to show you what I do with the drone sort of closer to the ground, if you will. All right, so let me get this pulled up. Just real quick here. DL says, I should have sent you my zipline gimbal shot to use. It was way simpler than a dolly. So yeah, for that battle scene in the Rangers, DL is talking about, we put a 5D on a homemade zipline sort of cable car and sent it down. Man, it was crazy. But yeah, so obviously there's lots of ways to move the camera outside of these ones that I'm sharing with you guys, but I'm sort of sharing the sort of tried and true sort of tools, if you will. Obviously there's tons of different ways and things you can rig up on your own and whatnot, but yeah, that gimbal rig was pretty sweet. Let's see here. Okay, so we're gonna dive right into drones then before we hit up this chat here, guys. So here we go. Okay, so drone shots. Obviously, we'll go through this first one. Fantastic. Oh, helps if I actually click on it, doesn't it? There we go. So drone shots are fantastic for these gorgeous establishing shots. So here we have a boat. We're out in the ocean. I think we're like 12 miles out off of Key West. But you know, it's an aerial shot. What can you say? It shows the scene. It shows you that we're out there in the middle of nowhere and whatnot. So yeah, this is kind of the typical drone shot that you see a lot of the time. You know, a nice, beautiful establishing shot. But drones can do so much more. And I'm going to show you that next. Okay, so this one I'm really happy with. I did this recently. A friend of mine was doing a project in collaboration with Mini Cooper, and we had this car for the day, and we wanted to get all these shots of the car driving around these neighborhoods that are being developed. And so I had the drone out there, and we went and got some drone footage of this car, and this was one of my favorite shots. It's a really dynamic shot, and it's really cool. And here, I'll stop talking about it and just let you guys see it. So here comes the car, and it almost escapes frame, but look at this. We're pulling back with it, we're coming down, and then we cross over this retaining wall and reveal everything. So it was a fantastic shot, but as you can see, we're close to the ground. You know, this is where our action is. And so it was a beautiful shot, and we were keeping up with the car, leading it, and then coming across this retaining wall and sort of revealing some of the environment and seeing where we are. It was just a really cool shot, and I'm glad that I got it. Now another drone shot, let's go right here. Yes, this is actually done on the drone. It's flying maybe 6 feet above the ground, so very low, but we needed to get this sort of tracking shot. Now, normally this would probably be something where you would set up like a dolly or something like that, but I used the drone for it, and so the drone could shoot in slow motion, and so we end up with this. So tracking along sideways with the drone, and we ended up with an amazing shot. So you would look at that and you would probably not at first guess assume that that is a drone shot, but that was a drone shot. So lots of different ways for you to utilize drones instead of just putting them as high as they can go. So you know, you got to try and think about it and get creative. This is another use of it. This was a winery where we were doing a film shoot, and I just wanted to get some stuff of the winery, and so this was a nice little reveal of their sign, you know, Mountain Run Winery. And so it was, you know, just a cool another use. Again, I'm not, you know, 100 feet up in the air. I'm maybe 20 feet up in the air, and it just made sense to use the drone to get a shot like that. So, and here, this isn't the most beautiful shot, but what I want to demonstrate with this is that, you know, drones can get these unique angles and perspectives, and if you're a good pilot, you can go like kind of through stuff that like you wouldn't be able to get any other sort of camera rig through. And so this is an example of sending it through an opening in some trees, and so, you know, we're pushing in, and you wouldn't be able to get this with any other kind of camera system. So, you know, obviously careful piloting to get through there, but you can get some really cool dynamic shots going through stuff, going around stuff, and all that. So drones, obviously a huge and powerful tool. I love them to death, and I'm always looking for new creative ways to use them. And like I said, most of the time, the best shots that I get with my drones are actually closer to the ground. rather than flying super high and getting that, establishing shot. They can do so much more than just establishing shots. So let's go ahead and let's take a... Sorry, I'm just going through our stuff here, so let's see. Okay, so I'm back. Had a little brain fart there. Okay, so she says, what about shoulder rigs, tripod fluid heads? So yeah, obviously you can, fluid head on your tripod, you get pans and tilts and whatnot. Those aren't really moving the camera, those are sort of pointing the camera. Today we're sort of focusing on physically moving that camera in space. A tripod, you're just pointing a camera. And so there's no actual motion there. Yeah, your frame will move and change what you're looking at. But sometimes you want to get it off of that tripod and you want to actually move the camera in space. So there we go. And shoulder rigs. Yeah, shoulder rigs are fantastic, give you a little bit more stability than just going handheld. So shoulder rigs are an option there as well. But again, the effect is the same. You're going to figure out how much chaos you want sort of in your frame and judge accordingly. If it's just a little bit of uneasiness, then shoulder rig maybe. But if you want it to be crazy battle, get in there handheld. That kind of deal. But yeah. So let's see here. Shoulder rigs are effectively a variation on handheld. Yeah, like I was just saying, it sort of adds a little bit more stabilization, but it still has that organic sort of handheld kind of feel. And let's see here. Jay says, I started shooting on an Inspire 2 recently. The depth of field and focal length of a 50mm on a drone is insane. Yeah, I would love to get one of those big boys, the Inspire 2 with like their new X7 camera, but my wife says I'm not allowed to drop 10 grand on a drone. So her being the smart, reasonable woman that she is, I think that's probably a good idea. So I don't think I'll be picking one up, at least not anytime soon. You say you cam up for a pilot. That's awesome. Yeah, those are the ones where you can do dual control, where somebody flies and somebody controls the camera. That'd be awesome. Let's see here. DL says, thoughts on the Mavic Air? I think it's great. I think it's very interesting. I don't think it's for me. I don't think I'm going to pick it up. But I do think that it shows, it sort of foreshadows updates coming to some of their other drones. Because what they've done, a lot of people are saying that the Mavic Air sort of kills the Mavic Pro because it's cheaper but actually has some more advanced features. So I think that tells me that the Mavic Pro might be getting an update to a version 2 to sort of reestablish the hierarchy, if you will, of their drones lineup. So who knows? New stuff coming. It's so hard to keep up with all this tech. New stuff comes out like every 6 months, and so you gotta kind of get what works for you and just be happy with it and stick with it. And my Phantom 4 has been treating me fantastic. It's not even the Phantom 4 Pro. It's just the Phantom 4, but I love it. Let's see here. Shizat says, now we just need a 1-inch Phantom 4 Pro like camera in a small foldable unit. Yeah, so who knows? Maybe they'll put something like the Phantom 4 Pro camera on a Mavic-sized body that's more portable. DJI seems to be doing a really good job of listening to people and giving them what they want. So I think they really have their ear to the ground, and I think they're going to give us some pretty cool stuff. So Capricorn Productions, what about a gimbal on a long pole? That's interesting, and I have actually done that before. I have a video somewhere. I'd have to look and find it. And I'll put a link down in the description below for you guys when I do find it so you can check it out. But yeah, little handheld gimbals. I did this with a GoPro one, I believe. A little handheld gimbal for a GoPro and attached it to a pole. And I was able to put it like way high up in the air and bring it down. I was able to push it like through stuff. Like I put it through like slats in like a railing, so it looks like the camera's moving through this railing in a way that you would think like, wait, how did you do that? So yeah, there are lots of ways to modify and accessorize and do all sorts of cool shots, but at the core of that system is still the gimbal. So that's why I focused on just gimbals. I mean, you can put a gimbal on the end of a crane. You can put a gimbal on top of a Steadicam. We actually did that when we did our Ronin and Steadicam comparison video. We took the Ronin, mounted it. Did we mount it on the Steadicam arm? I think we did. But then David was actually on a Segway at the same time, so we were zipping around. It was really cool. But yeah, I mean, you can mount them on the Steadicam arms to take care of that fourth axis. There's tons of stuff you can do and modify and accessorize, like I said. You can mount them to cars. You can mount them to jibs, like I said. So there's tons of ways to modify and do it. But at the core is the gimbal. So there we go. All right. Looks like we're winding down on the chat, which is perfect, guys, because we have been here for just a little bit over an hour. This was admittedly a lot of content. I'm glad we were able to get through it. And hopefully this helped you guys out with understanding and seeing some examples of what these different camera movement tools can do and when you would want to use them. I know it can be disheartening that there's not one tool that, you know, is perfect for everything. And so it seems like there's a lot of things that you got to pick up. But, you know, there is a tool for every job. And hopefully this helped you guys sort of see some examples of when I have used these various tools, you know, when I've gone handheld, when I've used sliders, when I've used gimbals, when I've used Steadicams, when I've used drones. So hopefully that helps you guys out. Like I said, I'll have all the links in the description down below of the gear that I use. I'll send you some links for that, and any of the videos that I referenced and whatnot. I will pop all that in the description down below so you guys can go and check that out and keep on researching. So I appreciate you guys coming in and hanging out with me live today for this. We do this every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And next week will be no exception. We will be here once again. And I have a show lined up for that. And actually, we have a unique thing happening because next week actually rolls over into February. So let me get to that first. Next week being February, the first Friday of every month, I do a live stream on Facebook, on the Aperture Facebook page, and then I take it and then repost it here to YouTube, but I will be live on Facebook on Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you guys want to come and hang out and join me over there, you are more than welcome, because we will be talking about cinematography rules and how to break them. So again, guys, that'll be over on the Aperture Facebook page, and I will be live over there on Facebook, and then the replay will be available here on YouTube. But like I said, I will also be live here on YouTube Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and for that show, we are going to be doing a live tour of my home office / studio. So you can kind of see right there, but I'm going to take that off so we don't give it all away. So basically, I'm going to show you guys behind the scenes of how I have all this set up, how I have my computer and live stream set up, how I shoot my videos in here, how I store my equipment. Basically, I'm going to walk you through everything that's happening in here. And yeah, it's a studio tour, self-explanatory. And yeah, so hopefully that will be entertaining, and you guys will come by and join me live next Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for that. So let's see what else we get here. All right, Shiznuts looks like he's heading out. Thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate you joining. Says there's no rules. It's all anarchy. Well, yeah, like I said, over on Facebook, it's going to be, the topic is cinematography rules and how to break them. So make sure to tune in for that one, because I got some cool stuff coming for that. But yeah, So guys, I really appreciate, once again, you guys coming in and hanging out with me. Any of you who are catching the replay and didn't join us live, why didn't you join us live? Live is fun. I mean, look at all this. We get have a good time in here. So make sure you subscribe to my channel and make sure you click that notification bell so that you will be alerted every time I go live, so you can come in here and join us. But guys, I am going to bring this one home and wrap it up. It is time for me to go and grab a late lunch. But thank you guys once again, and I will see you guys next week on both Friday and Saturday. So hope to see you in one or both of those shows. All right, guys, take care. Have a good one.